Hey everybody, I'm sitting here with Texas A&M women's head tennis coach Howard Joffe. First off, Coach, you're the first person or first coach that I've interviewed that's originally from another country outside of the States. Grew up in Johannesburg, South Africa. Is that right? It had to be kind of a shocker because I know you came over here for college when you came to Pepperdine to play. That kind of had to be a cultural shock, I guess, at times.
A little bit, definitely. Growing up in Johannesburg, South Africa, it is a little bit analogous to Los Angeles in the sense it's a big, ugly city. But just culturally, it was for sure very different being in America, in college in America, and so forth. So now I'm a U.S. citizen about 30 years later, and used to the ins and outs of everything.
Now, growing up there, what made you decide to come to the States to play?
I think as the head coach here, a lot of the players internationally and within the United States look at college athletics as a stepping stone to the pros, and that's just exactly the reason that I chose to go to Pepperdine. I was one of the top junior players in South Africa, and figured that going to play at Pepperdine at the time, every year really they're a top 10 program, might be able to sort of be a good pathway to the pros.
Now, having been an international player yourself, coming over here at a young age, and having a lot of international players under you now, does that help a little bit because you kind of understand what they're going through as far as making that change?
I think so. I think that with respect to coaching women, firstly, one needs to have a good understanding of the other, in this case, the players. And my sort of frame of reference, having been an international, knowing what it's like to live away from family, be a metaphorical outsider, allows me to identify maybe better than others would with not just necessarily the internationals, but kids that are coming to Texas from some other sort of frame of reference, as I said.
Now, when you played at Pepperdine, you were an All-American back in the early 90s, and then you went the professional route for a couple of years. That had to be a great experience as well, right?
Definitely. A much better experience sitting in a nice air-conditioned room here. I was a good tennis player. As a professional, I did just well enough to starve. So it was difficult, and yet in terms of the experience, it affords a person. I traveled 30 weeks of the year for about 6 years, all over every nook and cranny of the globe. And so in terms of the experience it gives you about yourself and life and so forth, it's invaluable for sure.
Now, kind of a two-part question, kind of piggybacking off of that. One, you were talking about traveling. Where was the coolest place you got to travel?
It's interesting. It's kind of like a question, pardon me, like what kind of food you like. It's different circumstance demands. Some really strange places. I would say that, like, in terms of sort of just beauty, probably like Paris, but then travel to some really exotic, if you will, places. Like Lusaka, Zambia. It's just a different slice of life, and so all of them have different memories. But I think the stuff that sticks with you more is places like Lusaka, Zambia, where it's just astounding to see how little people have.
Mm-hmm. And then also kind of the second part of that question, who is the biggest name or the best player you ever played against?
It's funny, when I was still a student at Pepperdine, Andre Agassi would come practice up at Pepperdine. He used to have some exhibitions in the old LA Forum. And then he started afterwards to fly me to Vegas to practice with him in preparation for Davis Cup and those type of things. So he's probably the biggest name that anyone listening would know.
Now, that was back when he still had hair, though, right?
Different girlfriend, very long hair, and I have a picture in my office. He's got like I don't know what you call it, almost a tank top. Like he wouldn't be seen dead in that today.
Right. Just kind of that fashion went out the window after a while. Now, of course, went the professional route, and then afterwards you started getting into coaching. Did you kind of know after maybe when your professional days were done that you wanted to get into coaching, or was it kind of a spur of the moment type deal?
I think more than anything, I fell into it. I think a lot of professional sports people in the aftermath, the careers are very short, are not ill prepared, and I was for what I wanted to do. But I had returned to South Africa and was asked, by some people, will you take a look at my son and daughter and hit some balls? And and with the passage of time, I think it was an excellent fit for me in relationship to sort of my personality, and the makeup. Coaching is a good spot for me.
Now, you were a longtime assistant at USC, and then you got your first head coaching job at Miami, Ohio, moved to Maryland for a couple of years, and then now you're down here. What made you decide to come to Texas A&M?
Yeah, it's interesting. The first head coaching job at Miami of Ohio, the school's athletic department is the slogan is it's the cradle of coaches. So it by definition implies it's a stepping stone job.
Right.
I think they had maybe like Bo Schembechler and a bunch of different coaches there. The Maryland was a much better opportunity, and yet when the job opened here at Texas A&M, it was sort of widely understood that Texas A&M support for the student athletes and for the athletic programs was second to none, and so on that basis it became a very attractive job.
Now, obviously, you've been here for 3 seasons. Texas A&M is steeped in tradition. If we do something more than once, it's called a new tradition. What's your favorite Aggie tradition? Do you have one?
And I don't know if this falls under the heading of actual Aggie traditions, but the howdy. I like the howdy. Just growing up and watching Western movies, folks would say howdy. So now every day I run into someone and it's howdy. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, just even from an outsider's perspective, you learn a lot of, or have seen nationally a lot of the traditions, most obviously highlighted by the tragic bonfire and so forth. But I can remember when I was working to get my green card in Ohio, that's when that all went down. But yeah, nothing that sticks out.
Now, also, since you've been here for only 3 seasons, A&M's had some of the best years that they've ever had in women's tennis, arguably the 2 best years. What would you credit to your success? Is it the players, the coaches, a little bit of both?
I think, just my assessment is that with all sports, the 2 things that matter, professional or college or anything, is you have to have the players. You can't win without the players, and then you need to be able to manage / and or coach those players in a way where they can produce. And I think that we've definitely been able to attract some of the top players in college, and on that basis, it's in spite of myself, we've done quite well. My partner in crime, Coach Weaver, who actually is an Aggie and was one of the better men's players, also does a fantastic job in coaching and managing the players. So we've had 2 or 3 very good seasons, and still hungry to get after it going forwards.
That's great. Now, at USC, you actually got your bachelor's in psychology. Does that help you out as a coach sometimes? Do you know what everybody's thinking now?
I think more than anything, my brother is a PhD, and I don't think he knows a damn thing about behavior. I don't know that Sigmund Freud did. But the one thing that is interesting in having taken the undergraduate classes is just in terms of the coaching, things like conditioning, shaping, those sorts of things that any freshman would learn in a psychology 101 course, help with the actual technical coaching. I would say. I think more than anything, life experience has taught me more than any degree to manage and know the athletes.
That way you can kind of say, hey, I've done this before, I messed it up, don't do that.
That's exactly right.
Now, competing in the SEC, I was going to ask you about this, and having been in the SEC, obviously it seems like across the board in any sport, the Southeastern Conference has some of the top ones or top teams that you can play in. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think I know this year in women's tennis, 5 of the top 10 teams in the country were out of the SEC. I know a lot was made after my first year of us going into the SEC. From the Big 12 is the case at the time. And I think, the big item just that strikes me, like I hit on before, the fundamental things. If you've got good players, you manage and coach them well, I think you can be successful in any league. And the opposite is true as well. If you do a lousy job, it doesn't matter. You can always do worse. Right. So it does so happen that the SEC is a very, very strong league. One of the things that personally I like about it, because I've done a stint now in the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12, so I got a good experience with it, is the SEC is probably the best organized league that I've seen, and most, and I use this word tentatively, but professional with the respect to the way they conduct their business.
That's first time that I've heard at least that part. I mean, I kind of understood that already, but yeah, from coaches, I can really see how that would just kind of the professionalism that the SEC carries itself with. Now, I know I'm sure you're always busy. You're always either doing interviews or you're on the court or you're in the office. But if you do finally have some free time, what are you doing?
That's a good question. I think I've done quite a poor job in my 3 years here of doing things that aren't getting the tennis team going. And I think one of the challenges for me living in College Station is to get out more and do fun things. The only thing I could point to is occasionally some golf or movies, those type of things. But I think with the passage of time, now that our team is sort of, I think each of the last 2 years we've ended inside the top 10, as we get more established, one has to balance the work and the private life more. But I have no complaints.
Okay, well, good. Now, you were mentioning movies. Have you seen a good one lately?
Actually, this is a horrible endorsement on Hollywood, but no, I've not seen a good one lately. In fact, I've seen some awful ones.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. At the moment, I'm sort of relegated to watching Netflix. What do they call them? Series.
Okay.
Those are I watched The House of Cards and
right.
the one with the Breaking Bad. But the movies at the moment actually don't seem terribly good.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people would agree with you on House of Cards and Breaking Bad. Those are two really good ones. I've watched both of those. Those are pretty good. Now, we already talked about TV shows, and I know tennis is your true love, and I'm sure you probably watch matches and things like that. But is there any other sport that you follow kind of closely? As we got soccer going on in here.
Well, I am the biggest sports slut of all time. Growing up in South Africa, of course, it's cricket and rugby and stuff. Since I've been, my whole adult life in America, I think I know every baseball race, even at the moment. It's so early in the season in the major leagues. I follow the college football. I follow probably the only sport that I don't follow super closely is the hockey league, okay. The ice hockey league. But other than that, yeah, the NFL, the college. I like know the NL East race at any given time of the year. So yeah, I'm like big on the sports.
So who's your favorite baseball team? In California, did you get started pretty early? I guess Pepperdine would be around LA, right?
My first year was, I think, when Fernando Valenzuela was pitching for the Dodgers. But yeah, I like the Dodgers. There's a number of different teams I like. I do like the Dodgers, although they haven't been great in the last few years. And then just like any, I think, international person, they say the Cowboys is America's team and the Yankees would be analogous in baseball. So I'm a fan of the Yankees, okay. in spite of the fact that they're the evil empire and so forth.
In spite of everybody else not liking them. There are a few people out there that we know that like them. Yeah, Shannon likes them. Now, been here in the States for a long time, finally got your citizenship. Congratulations, by the way. And you've been here in the States for a while, but only been in Texas for a few years. Now, Texas is kind of its own beast. What are some interesting things about Texans that you've noticed?
I think it is interesting. I've definitely, with all the job moving, have had a good sort of cross-section of American culture, from Los Angeles to Maryland, which is the East Coast, to Miami of Ohio, which is the middle of the Midwest. I think culturally, Texans are awful friendly people. They go out of their way to engage, to be helpful, and to be friendly. And it's just a different sensibility living. My last job was at Maryland. You go into the local Starbucks there and, give you the finger. Here, they will call you by your name and know what coffee you like and so on. So, definitely Texans can be very proud of the fact that culturally they're very warm and endearing and so on.
Good. I've heard that from a lot of people as well. Now, I ask this from athletes all the time, and I've asked a couple of the coaches already. They really haven't given me any good ones, but do you have any nicknames? Do your players call you by any or they just call you coach?
Truthfully, the nicknames that they call me are probably not PG-13 or for this interview. Okay. I think you can probably tell by the dynamic of this interview, my nature with the team is fairly colloquial, and so they don't necessarily need to call me coach or anything of that. It's very informal and laid back in that sense. But definitely, they would say that they have some nicknames from me.
Okay. I've gotten that from a couple of coaches as well, but yeah, that's pretty good though, that you kind of more laid back with your team. Now, some fill in the blanks. One thing that really ticks me off is.
I think this just relates to professionally. One thing I think is that there is a perhaps an unwritten perception about what the good programs are. Okay. If I can make an analogy, every year when people fill out their brackets, it's Duke basketball, right. And so on. Well, the same is true of the women's tennis, and we're a program that has outplayed many of the top schools, certainly over the last 2 years, and so that's the part that's difficult. Is we got to the championship match of the NC2A tournament last year. The top 15 kids in the country don't return the calls because I don't know that there's a stigma attached to it, but it's not as, pardon the word, sexy as being at Duke or at Stanford. And so the competitor in me doesn't like that, and we'll keep beating up on these programs until that changes.
You think maybe it might have something to do with the heat?
No, I wish the part of me that ticks me off so much is I don't know that there's anything substantive that one can point to except perception. Right. And so certainly the heat in Texas is rather tough, but I wouldn't trade that for the snow on the East Coast any day of the week.
All right, Coach, another fill in the blank. If I wasn't coaching, I would be on
Social Security. I don't know. I think earlier on in our conversation you talked about how I got into coaching. My nature is, I'm sure there are plenty of folks around who would say that Coach Joffe is a selfish you-know-what, but I think I am fairly other-oriented, and so that lends me to understand people quite well. I have good antennae, and so coaching is a really a very good fit for me. Probably it would be some other-oriented career. I mentioned earlier my brother's a psychologist, right. Something of that ilk.
Okay. All right, well, that'd be pretty cool. And a song that I can't get out of my head is?
Boy, at the moment, I'm just trying to think. We've just got done with our season, so of course when the young ladies are on the car, it's all the hip-hop songs, but I'm drawing a blank.
Is there a certain kind of music or a certain genre that you like most?
I'm all over the place. The girls sort of censor me. I actually really love country music, really? But the girls generally censor me, and so it's when we all travel, it's usually the hip hop and so forth. But I'm a big fan of country.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. Do you have a favorite artist or?
Yeah. I would say like George Strait, Garth Brooks, and then some of the like Toby Keith, all over the place.
All right. Good man. A scenario. It's your last meal. What do you order?
Boy, definitely, yeah, likely just horribly heavy burrito.
Okay.
But followed with, I have the sweetest tooth in the world, so followed by like four milkshakes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. I was about to say, I'm kind of about the same way. I go to Freebirds, get a big burrito, and then I get one of their brownies or something like that. It's kind of, yeah.
Exactly.
Now, in coaching, you've been in it for a while now. Is there one athlete in particular that has had a real impact on you? It could be in coaching or as a person.
No, I mean, I think like one of the things, not because I'm conducting research for my coaching, but just stuff that sticks in your head over the years. I can remember watching when I was still a tennis player. Michael Jordan was interviewed. I think he had already won a bunch of championships, and then I think there was that incident with his father, and he'd stopped, and then he'd come back to it. And it always stuck in my head. Jordan said, because he was so untouchable, his comment just stuck with me, which was, "There's always someone better."
Right.
And you know, I think that. That's something that has stuck with me in relationship to sort of how given context and meaning to the work one's doing, because the end cannot always be winning, and there's always going to be a better team, there's always going to be someone with another ring. It's got to be a little bit more, not to sound too Zen-esque, but a little bit more about the process than the end, which is the winning.
Okay. And that could be applied to this as well. I'm sure it could. But when an athlete comes to Texas A&M after they spend their time with you, what's one thing you want them to take with them as they go either into the professional career or go out back on the tennis courts as a pro?
One thing they have to take with them is the Aggie ring, which hints at we have just 3 simple team rules: is don't shortchange yourself or the school on the effort in the classroom or on the tennis court. And then the third one is to try to become a better version of yourself. And I hope that the tennis is used, aside from the wins and losses and titles and so forth, the tennis and the schooling and the experience is used to make a better version of each kid.
All right. Fantastic, Coach. Well, thank you so much for your time, and stay cool this summer, okay?
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Zach. Thanks for having me.